Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. Bob Uvello.
Nice to be here. This is called The Company of Strangers. I prefer company of strangers. Like the folks you find in the blue light of a small town barroom. On a westbound train, when the shadows tell you night time's coming soon. I prefer the company of strangers. Know they'll be around when the sun shines, around for the good times. When the cold rain falls, you know they won't be found. Yet still, unlike an old friend, they can't let you down, down, down. I prefer the company of strangers. Like a girl you meet at a truck stop on the outskirts of San Antonio. When you break down on a dark road, someone helps you make your way home. I prefer the company of strangers. You know they'll be around when the sun shines, around for the good times. When the cold rain falls, you know they won't be found. Yet still, unlike an old friend, they can't let you down, down, down. I prefer the company of strangers. Like the folks you find in the blue light of a small town barroom. On a westbound train, when the shadows tell you night time's coming soon. I prefer the company of strangers. called the Last Days of April. Last days of April hasn't been my friend. Just don't feel like summer's round the bend. I woke up this morning, I felt a cold November wind. No point to lie, you'd see it in my eyes. Wouldn't it a lie? You'd see it in my eyes. Never felt so alone, ain't about someone to call. Never felt so let down, ain't about someone to break your fall. Never felt so old, that's how it is, that's all. Wouldn't do to lie, it's right there in my eyes. No point to lie, you'd see it in my eyes. Last days of April, she hasn't been my friend. Just don't feel like summer's round the bend. I woke up this morning, I felt a cold November wind. Wouldn't do to lie, it's right there in my eyes. No point to lie, you'd see it in my eyes. Yeah, it's the last days of April.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Talkin' Tunes. I am your host, Frank Walsh. Thanks for tuning in today. Now folks, you just heard Bob Uvello. He is a singer, songwriter. He is a local guy. He's got quite a few stories to tell about his musical background, his style of music, some of the opening acts that he has opened for over the years, and he's quite an interesting guy. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you once again, Mr. Bob Uvello. Bob, thanks for coming in today, man.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. That was a nice way to kick off the show. But,
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. But, as I said, you're a local guy. I didn't realize all this time that we lived about a mile away from each other.
Small world.
It is small, but as Stephen Wright would say, I wouldn't want to paint it. But as I said, you've been around quite a bit. So why don't you take a couple of minutes and just kind of tell the Bob Uvello story about just whatever you want to talk about. Start yourself, a little bit about your background. And then
boy.
I'll zero in from there.
Oh, boy.
You're not getting off the hook.
Well, so music started for me when I was 14 years old. I bought a guitar, and from that point on, I did little else. As a result, barely made it out of high school. Got up on a stage for the first time at the age of, I think it was 18.
Wow.
And The first night went great. So on the strength of that, I went back the following week, and I ended up leaving the stage about halfway through with the words, "I'm sick, I have to go." Because the room was spinning,
Wow.
literally.
Now let me ask you, do you remember what that first song was that you played?
No.
No.
But I wasn't doing my own songs at that time. So it's a really good chance that it was either a Bob Dylan song, maybe a Phil Oakes song, or I could run through a long list. But
Cool.
yeah.
Now, what was that? Was that back 60s, 70s?
1870.
No. Well, you and I, we, I think we met at the Last Supper. You were serving wine and I was cleaning tables afterwards.
That was it. So let's see. So that would have been 1968.
68, right. Kind of like the Summer of Love. You get 68, 69. So you're kind of a Woodstock guy, right?
Yeah, though I didn't make it there. And I have mixed feelings about that, the way that turned out.
I think we'll talk about that a little later.
Yeah, but so that was the beginning, and back in those days, right on one stretch of Charles Street in Boston,
yeah.
There were 5 clubs that were open 7 nights a week, with essentially folk music.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
well, it was so close to Cambridge too. I mean, you go back to Cambridge, and you had the Idler.
Played there.
You had the Idler. You had all those, the coffee shops over there. And
Passim
still there.
Still there.
And then you had those concerts on the Commons on Sunday afternoons,
Yep.
and so you were kind of in the hotbed down there.
I was, but it was I was a little bit late to the party because even by that time, things were starting to close down, and I was developing a serious complex because I would get a booking at a club, and by the time my date came up, the club had closed, and I was seeing a pattern emerge there. But
we're continuing the pattern of what we talked about off the air.
What we talked about off the air.
Yeah, every time I had a sponsor for the show, they went out of business, or closed, or just moved away.
Yeah, but it was. So yeah, folk music was already on the wane, and so in terms of the musical journey, so that was.
Well, let me ask you, how did you get hooked onto folk music? I mean, 68, 60. We were coming off of the the rock and roll era.
Yep.
Dylan was bursting on the scene. Then you get your Dylan, your Donovans, and you started to get all the folkies. When you were growing up, you obviously, at least I don't think you were listening to folk unless you were going back to the oldies.
Nope.
So how did you decide to focus on that area back then?
So must have been the mid-'50s. I saw Elvis Presley on television.
Okay.
It was on the Ed Sullivan Show. I think it was the first time he was on television.
From the waist up, right?
And I stared at that. I sat there on the floor staring at that screen, and I said, I'm going to do that.
Good for you.
And
that was the moment.
Pretty much. And the next musical recollection I have is the song by Marty Robbins, one of the greatest songs ever,
in the West
El Paso.
Piston town of El Paso. I knew that was coming.
And at that point, I decided that the most romantic thing that could possibly happen in your life is to be shot down off your horse and have Felina by your side.
Well, you could have gone home and put on your, a white sports coat and your pink carnation, after you fell off the horse,
No, it was definitely the horse and that whole thing.
That's a great story song. He did great story songs.
He was incredible, and as a vocalist, he was incomparable.
Very, very much so.
Yeah.
What about Frank Ifield? Did you get into that too? He was pretty big back then.
No.
He was one of my favorites.
No.
Remember that one? I remember you.
Oh, yeah.
You're the one. He started doing that.
Yep.
That's interesting that you get into that. And how did you switch over? I mean, you go from Elvis to that, and then you start, with the Marty Robbins. I could see where that was maybe your first couple of steps.
Yeah, and I would have to say Bob Dylan, Joan Baez and Bob Dylan. I've always been, shouldn't say always, but I was writing poetry before I started playing music, and so the words were always very important. And so when Bob Dylan came on the scene, compared to, I mean, I loved the Beatles, but Yeah, Yeah, Yeah,
Stones?
not really. Strictly Beatles.
Really?
But,
yeah. I mean,
but the early
okay, I thought
Beatles,
yeah was a get your yeah.
I loved the music, but the lyrics really weren't speaking to me. Now, obviously, later on, the Beatles became very sophisticated
Yes, they did.
lyrically. But early on, it really wasn't speaking to me. So when I heard Bob Dylan and I heard the words, and the other thing, the bonus was, I said, "Damn, I can sing it as good, at least as good as he can."
Exactly.
So, yeah, so I'd say that was pretty much the.
Because that's when he came out, I believe he came out, what, Highway 61 Revisited, wasn't that?
No, way before that.
Way before that?
I'd say there were probably at least three albums before
Really?
that. Three,
what was
maybe
his first
four.
one? What did he kick off with? I thought I knew them all. I have them all.
I think the first one was just called Bob
Bob
Dylan.
Dylan, yeah.
And then Another Side of Bob Dylan, I think, came out.
Really? Okay.
And there were several.
He has so many of them, it's hard to keep track of the,
Indeed,
the progression of them.
indeed. So,
Did you get into the protest songs as well? Because that's when the Peter, Paul and Marys and the Petey Arrows and they started doing some of the protest songs and get into that stuff.
yeah, for sure. And then my taste morphed along with the changes that were happening. Crosby, Stills and Nash.
Yep.
You mentioned protest songs. They have several.
Yeah, Ohio.
And
Yep.
and
Find the Cost of Freedom.
beautiful song, but I'm blanking on a couple of the others.
Yeah.
So their sound was just incredible. So
Right,
I,
right.
I really loved that.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of left the pure folk music behind, and was sort of drawn to the musicality of a group like Crosby, Stills and Nash.
Now you mentioned Phil Oakes. I mean, a lot of people don't know Phil Oakes. They might know a song that they say, "Oh, I've heard that song before." But Phil Oakes, his voice is so unique.
Distinctive.
When you listen to Phil Oakes, it's Phil Oakes. And I think back in the day, I don't think there was anyone who wrote as many protest songs as he did. It's almost every song that he wrote was a protest song in some way or fashion.
Most of them were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was quite a talent for you to hold your hat, put your hat on to that. Now, how was it back then? When you break into the scene, I always find it interesting, to learn how easy or difficult it is or was back then to break into the scene, to get the gigs, to get to the clubs, and and compare and contrast some of the differences then to what it is now as far as the ease or difficulty to get gigs.
I can answer that pretty succinctly. The big difference is, and it's about the same today in terms of how easy or difficult.
Mm-hmm.
The big difference is, back then, they were almost all listening rooms, where
Okay.
the primary focus was the music.
Good point.
You might have coffee and
Right.
pastries, but the music was the focus. Now, if you want to be working on a regular basis, it's going to be at the breweries and the pubs
Yep.
and restaurants. So there are plenty of opportunities to play, but might be a little bit harsh to say, but for the most part, you're going to be background to what people are there to primarily do.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but
Right.
that's the difference.
I always find it almost insulting in some ways, as a music appreciator, and I can imagine what it is from the performer when you go in there, and you're playing at places, and right behind you they have 3 televisions going, like right behind you or right next to you, and
Sure.
you're performing, and then people instead of looking at you, they're just looking over here, and I could not really understand that. I have a hard time with that, and I
I
find
do as well.
it.
I do as well. And I'm not a prima donna by any stretch, but I just, for the most part, don't play in those places. And I did that. I
Right.
did that. For 15 years, I earned my living as a musician, teaching guitar on the side to make some money. And I did all of that. I played at the places, the ground rounds, and
Sure.
And so there's a younger crowd of guys and gals out there doing those places now, and I say more power to them.
Right. But it is nice to see that, every once in a while, a new place does open up where it is listed. Like, Jimmy's, you have Jimmy's up in New Hampshire now, which is a listening room. You have the music room down the Cape, Paul Nelson's place. And, those are listening rooms.
Right.
And, there are a few places around there. There are quite a few down in Rhode Island. If you play Rhode Island, there are a lot of venues down around Rhode Island.
Yeah,
around the Rhode Island scene.
Yeah. There are a few around there, and I try to play at them. But the problem there is there are so few of them that the competition for those spots is pretty stiff.
And I think too that a lot of the people, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that as our generation has aged over the years, we get to that point where where back in the day we used to go out at 9 o'clock and come home at 1 o'clock.
Right.
Now we go to bed at 9 o'clock. And some of these places, even for blues music or rock music or wherever, I mean, there are venues like you go into the Beehive in Boston. They have great talent in there. A lot of my friends, probably some of the people they play there. Some of their shows don't start till 10 o'clock.
Right.
It's back in the day, that's one thing, but I guess that maybe just for the people who live in Boston, right in downtown Boston, it's very, very, sequestered in there. But
right.
Do you notice that too, that over the time that the audience has changed and, fewer and fewer people of our generation are getting out as much as they used to?
Tell you a funny story.
Go
we
for
went
it.
to the Sinclair in
Cambridge,
to see a wonderful artist. And so we walked in, big room, and we're looking around. I'm thinking about, well, they must have folding chairs. They must all be over against the wall, and you have to go over and get your own chair.
That's funny.
No, there were no chairs.
Wow.
You were expected to stand for the entire show because people were dancing and they were moving around.
Oh, wow.
And and so that was a generational shock.
Wow.
It's like, where are the chairs?
Yeah, I think the closest I've gotten to anything like that was out at what's it, the T-Can out in T-Can. I found that one time I went out there one time, and I don't know, I haven't been there in a while, but I remember when it used to be in a storefront. Do you remember back then, like the 70s or the 80s?
No, when I started going there, they were in their present.
I remember one time it was, maybe they were in transition, but it was kind of like a storefront. The big glass window. It was almost like in a little strip, and when you walked in, it's like, okay, how many people are we going to have tonight? So it was very similar to that, where you walk in, and if there wasn't enough chairs, they had them all stacked over in the corner,
Sure.
and you had to go and get your own chair,
which is fine.
and sit where you wanted to.
I don't mind doing that. But to realize I was going to be standing there for 2.5 hours was a little bit of a wake up.
Well, they do that at the House of Blues down there too. They did that in Boston. They you can sit in the balconies around the thing up top, first or the second level, but the floor, no seats.
Right.
And you have to stand for all of that time, and some of them are 2 or 3 hour shows.
Right.
And they opened up that new music room. Speaking of music room, they opened up the MGM down there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been to that yet, but I hear that it's quite a place. A little pricey, but I hear that it's quite the place. Now, I think maybe this would be a good little pause where we can maybe hear a little bit more music. So we're going to take a little break. We're going to sit back and let the audience at home enjoy a little bit of your music. Okay. So folks, sit back and enjoy, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Okay, well, I've got a new album coming out. The recording's all done, and we're just doing the finishing up the graphics. And That album's going to be called Blue Streak. And this is the title track from that album. The kid was cussing the blue streak. He was kicking at the air. He wore blue jeans and a red cap, sneakers, a worn out pair. I said, what is the matter? He said, what's it to you? What do you care? Anyway, I left my pack on that damn bus. I know it's gone to stay. If it's alright with you, I'll stand here and cuss. He was too young to know, too young to be told. Living's mostly losing, living is letting go. Living's letting go. He said, you ever lose something that meant a whole lot to you? Something that could not be replaced, no matter what you do. Nothing you can do. The question hit me like a cold wind that blows dust into your eye. I turned my face from that young kid. I'll tell you why. Because grown men don't cry. Grown men don't cry. He was too young to know, too young to be told. Living's mostly losing, living is letting go. Living's letting go. Memories have sharp edges, cut you to the bone. Old friends run out of road, have left you more alone. And a sweet young angel, eyes bluer than blue. And feel of a cold gun pressed into your back that introduced you to a brand new you. It was cussing a blue streak. He was kicking at the air. He wore blue jeans and a red cap, sneakers, a worn-out pair. I said, what is the matter? He said, what's it to you? What do you care? Anyway, I left my pack on that damn bus. You know it's gone to stay. If it's alright with you, I'll do this my way. Genre of music is existential cowboy noir. Love saying that. And I think I could be wrong, but I think this song pretty much touches all those bases. This is Dreams of Montana. Dreams of Montana, those icy blue eyes. The white peaks around us, it's 1975. The sun's heat caresses our summer brown skin. Somehow I believe these days will never end. Time leaves only memories, yours or someone else's of you, with flashes of light on a river racing through deep canyons. Time flowing by. Long days of endless blue skies, cold nights filled with song, high cries of coyotes out beyond the light of our fire. Slow winding rivers, black skies bright with stars. Long roads lead to small towns, we're singing songs, old cowboy bars. Time lives on in memories, yours or someone else's of you, with flashes of light on a river racing through deep canyons. Time flowing by. Dreams of Montana, those icy blue eyes. White peaks around us. It's 1975. Somehow I believed those days would never end. Sun going down behind those black hills. The sky is on fire, got some time to kill. The morning light is still 500 miles down this road. One more time, one more ride. I will ride. It's a new town tomorrow, new girl tonight. Maybe she'll love me, just don't seem right. I'm here for the evening, gone with the morning light. Got my windows rolled down, the air is cool and clean. Moonlight on snowfall, got some time to dream. I left no one behind, waiting by the phone for my call. Tonight I drive, tomorrow I ride. I will ride. It's a new town tomorrow, new girl tonight. Maybe she'll love me, just don't seem right. I'm here for the evening, gone with the morning light. From the Calgary Stampede down old Cheyenne, sunlight on the mountains, there just might be some plan. It's in my soul, it's in my blood, gave my all, done the best I can. 6 times in big money, 600 in the mud, in the mud. It's a new town tomorrow, new girl tonight. Maybe she'll love me, just don't seem right. I'm here for the evening, gone with the morning light. Sun going down behind those black hills. The sky is on fire, got some time to kill. Morning light is still 500 miles down this road. One more town, one more ride. Black Hills. Thank you, thank you.
Wow, Bob, that was a nice little interlude there.
Thank you.
You've got quite the array of songs. Now let's talk a little bit more specifically about your music. That you are a performer and a songwriter, and you get a CD out. You've released a CD in the past, and you're in the process of working on a new CD that's going to be coming out soon. And talk a little bit about your the writing process. I mean, how do you write your songs? Where does your inspiration come from? Do you just pick up that pen and it flows naturally, or where do those ideas, and how easy or difficult is it to pick up the pen and put it on paper?
It varies. I'll start with the most recent song that I completed, and the genesis of that was one line on a cable show that I was watching. And the line was, and it was in some sort of context, I don't recall, a bourbon-stained Bible.
I like it.
And so when I started working with it, I was drawn to the alliteration of bourbon and Bible, but bourbon is not a word to sing. So I changed it to whiskey-stained Bible, because that sings well.
That's got more of a country twang to it.
Yeah. And because all I had was one line to work with, and I just loved the line, I had to construct the entire song around it. And I probably have...
Now, was that the hook, or did you just incorporate that into
just
the song?
incorporated
it.
And so I would say probably 2 or 3 trees have given their lives, because I write on paper.
That's one of my lines. I like that line.
And I've got a stack of papers this thick for that song.
Wow.
It did not pour out of me.
Interesting.
I worked it.
How long did it take you? I mean, all that time, does it take you days, weeks, or?
I've been working on that one for probably 2 months.
Wow.
Now, contrasting with that, and this is the only time this has ever happened in my life, I think most songwriters would agree that over the years they've had dreams in which there's a song. And it's not a song they've ever heard before. And maybe this is just me, I don't know, but I will hear a song in the dream, and within the dream, sometimes, and I don't know how strange this is, but sometimes I have dreams within dreams.
Okay.
And in the dream, I'm listening to the song and thinking to myself, wow, that's not just a good song, that is the best song that anyone has ever written.
Right.
And all I need to do is wake up in the morning and write it down.
Good luck with that.
And
right?
of course,
good luck with that.
Nothing, not a word,
Exactly.
not a note, not a shred,
Exactly.
nothing. Except
Exactly.
for one time, less than a year ago, one time, I woke up, had a pad next to the bed and a pen, and I began furiously writing. And I wrote down 9 complete lines, and I had the melody in my head, and I had the mood of the song in my head, and then I constructed the rest of the song around that. And if it wasn't strange enough, in the dream, Bob Dylan was singing the song.
Oh, I've done that many times. I mean, we'll get to a little bit in a second, but which comes first, the chicken or the egg as far as your writing, the melody or the lyrics, or changes different times?
If there was, with the exception of that one that I just mentioned, I'd say the majority of them begin with a little guitar melody that I'm playing, and something that I'm drawn to, and then I'll just keep playing that and developing it, and then a thought will come. And that's probably the way most of them get written.
Yeah. It's interesting when you talk about, lyrics and so forth, that it's going to be, the best song that was ever written and all that other stuff. I don't know about you, but, I've been into music since I was this big. Listening and appreciating it is that how many times you hear songs that you may have never heard before, but as you're listening to it, you say, that sounds just like this.
Sure.
And
Sure.
I think almost all songs, are pieces, little pieces of this, that, and the other thing from other songs that they hear. Maybe in that dream, or maybe in that subconscious state, they hear something that could be a memory of a song that they had heard, and it just kind of stuck in their head, and they forgot about it. But I find that all the time, that so many songs I'm listening to, I change the lyrics to them. I'll be sitting there with my wife, and a song will come on, and I'll say, oh, you hear that melody, right? Now they're singing the song as they're recording it,
Right.
and I'm singing the song that it sounds like, and it fits right in.
It's not even surprising,
Yeah.
given the number of songs that there are and the number of songs that we've
Yeah.
listened to. Yeah, sure. There has to be crossover.
There has to be. There has to be. So
All the notes have been used. They've all been used. It's a question of rearranging them in a unique way.
well, other than I always say, and it's one of my favorite little quotes. You familiar with Jason Ritchie? Jason Ritchie is the arguably, or in many cases, inarguably the greatest harmonica player of our generation.
Okay.
And if you listen to him, you don't listen to anybody else. And my line always was that he plays notes that haven't been invented yet.
Okay. Okay. I stand corrected.
He plays notes that haven't been invented yet.
Okay.
So
All right.
that's funny. Well, all right. So let's talk a little bit about your, some of the other things you've done. You and I had a pretty common interest, and actually, this is the first time of us meeting.
Right.
First time we met this morning on the way, but during conversations with the time, we have a lot in common. That
We do.
we're both English teachers.
That's right.
And how much of your background in English did help you, as far as your musical career? Did it make it easier for you? Because I know, and are you a grammar snob? Are you a grammar snob? Fess up.
Sad to say yes.
Yes, you and I both. Fess up.
Which
I could tell that from our written conversations.
which makes contemporary life very challenging because
Amen to that.
it's absolutely.
You're blushing under that cowboy hat.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. No, I confess, guilty as charged.
Yeah, I sense that. I mean, I remember I used to teach creative writing and interpretive poetry. And, in college I taught at, Boston State, which became UMass. Where did you teach? You taught?
I was at Curry College.
Curry College, right, that's right, you had told me that. And I tell you, I think, the college kids ain't what they used to be.
Well, the funny is, this is really funny. So by the time I was teaching, I was standing up in front of the class in blue jeans and cowboy boots, and all of the guys in the class were sitting there with sport jackets on and ties. So there had been a complete reversal.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. I remember my first day of college. I mean, this would have been in this would have been 1970. Get out, I took a year off and went to another school, took some classes, so I went, started Boston State in 1970, and it was State Teachers College. And I remember my first day of class, it was required to wear a jacket and tie. It was required. And within a week or two, the college was taken over by the Vietnam protesters. And all the hippies and all that, and the love-ins and all of that stuff took effect. And they had seized the president's office and all of that stuff. And within a week or two, all the clothes that I had bought, my jackets and shirts and ties, went back into the closet because it all became, one of their protests was eliminate the dress code, peace,
Sure.
love, and
Yep.
understanding and all that stuff. So they eliminated the dress code. And that whole thing went down there. But and I remember when I was teaching too, is that a seminal moment for me is that when I took my first class at UMass, and I would pass out these cards and say, listen, tell me a little bit about yourself. Give me, some background about you. So I passed out some index cards so I'd know all the kids and everything, right? And I remember I was looking at this one card, and there was a girl. She was, a lot of adults were in the class too. I guess this one was probably in her mid-20s. And she put on the card that she had worked at Arby's Roast Beef. And she spelled roast beef Rostbeefe on that card. And that was my first class, and I never forgot that. Never forgot that. But we digress.
We digress.
We digress. Now, what kind of English were you teaching? What were you teaching? Were you teaching the standard stuff?
Well, actually, my background, my degree was in English, but I actually was not teaching English.
Really?
No, I was in the music department.
Oh, okay.
And this was in the 70s, and especially the small colleges were having a really difficult time staying afloat.
Yeah.
And so they were really bending over backwards to come up with courses that would appeal to the students. Mm-hmm. Very, very different sort of courses. So I was teaching two courses of my own creation. One I wanted to call Psychology of Performing, but the psych department mm-hmm. wouldn't hear of that, so it was mm-hmm. called Aspects of Performing. And then I had a songwriter's workshop. So the English did come into play. And then I was also teaching a introduction to music theory and composition and arrangement. And the way I fell into that was, initially I was going to just be there teaching guitar, and the music teacher at the school was fired for selling the band instruments. And but anyway, that's how I ended up there. And then when I taught in the Boston public schools, I taught woodworking. And
I taught in Boston for a while. That was an interesting experience back then.
It was an interesting experience. And part of what got me into all of that trouble was something my father had ingrained in me, and that was, if somebody offers you an opportunity, say yes and thank you, and then figure out how you're going to do it.
I like that. I like that. Let me ask you one thing, because it happens to me. I like to write. I write poetry. I have hundreds of unwritten songs, and unfinished song, I should say. And being the English guy, especially when you're doing some of your country music and some of your lyrics, do you struggle sometimes writing slang or writing like idioms and colloquialisms versus writing it perfect English? Because I struggle with that.
You've been reading my diary.
Really, like ain't, like, you want to put ain't in the song and you go to write that ain't and it's like, oh, I don't want to do that.
For a long
I ain't
time.
going to do that. So you struggle with that too?
I did. Yeah. But I've gotten over it, and now my writing is peppered with.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, and it just kind of happened. I just realized that, I don't know, I really can't explain it, but the first part of it, you are nail on the head. I had the most difficult time with that.
I could sense that. I did. That's funny.
I did.
That's funny.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about your CD. And you had mentioned something about your cowboy image and how that you had a story about that. Did we already touch on that, or is there more that?
No, we didn't.
That you wanted to elaborate on? That you said I have a story about that. So let it rip.
Well, as I've said already, the whole Marty Robbins thing, that just was imprinted on my mind.
Right.
I don't know how old I would have been at that time, but this is my second CD. And
what's the title?
This one's called Deep Canyons, and it's the second one. The third one will be out shortly, but there's a 16-page booklet in there with all of the lyrics because, as I mentioned,
I'm going to go through that, by the way, with a red pen.
And you'll find one or two. Despite 5 proofreadings, you'll still find one or two. To my deep chagrin.
I ain't gonna on the gunners.
You will.
And the ain'ts.
But so there's a photograph in here of me probably at the age of 5 or 6.
Really.
sitting on a horse with my little cowboy outfit on, and I can't explain it. My father was a police officer, never wanted to be a cop, never wanted to be a cowboy.
He was a city cop?
He was a city
cop,
of Boston.
Yeah.
Cowboy was it from the beginning.
Interesting.
And had a very strange experience. My first drive across country, I got to the desert Southwest, got out of the car, walked out into the desert, and just stood there for a long while. And it was the only time I've done a fair amount of traveling. I've seen a pretty good part of the world.
Was this in Arizona where you were? Or?
Yeah, it was Arizona.
Arizona, yeah.
Seen a pretty good part of the world, and it's the only place that I've ever been where I had an overwhelming feeling of coming back.
Nice.
And I'm not that kind of person.
I
I'm not a
understand.
spiritual, touchy-feely kind of person.
I
but
understand.
that I can't deny. It felt like coming back.
Yep.
And so it's always been in my blood. It's always been there.
See, the good thing is that you recognize that. You know, I mean, I have similar experiences to that, but I think that there are probably a lot of people who have that opportunity and miss it. You know what I mean? They that opportunity is there for them to step back and feel that experience and almost that deja vu type of thing and meditate that feeling and all of that stuff. So it's great that you caught that and that you were able to experience that, because I bet a lot of people don't. And they're afraid to admit that too.
Right.
You know, they're afraid to admit that.
Well, my next job after teaching at Curry College was working on a ranch in Montana.
Wow, that's cool.
And I've corrected myself only recently. I've been claiming that I was a cowboy. I was a ranch hand.
Wow.
And trust me, there's a difference. Cowboy is a very sophisticated trade that takes a long time to learn. So instead, I would saddle the Jeep up in the morning and ride out with a load of fence posts and a big bale of barbed wire, and I would fix fences all day long. But as I like to say, the office that I worked in was magnificent, because when you stopped and you just looked around, it was the middle of the summer, and the sun was still shining on the snow-covered mountains, and it was just magnificent.
There's a song in there somewhere.
Well, there's a song. Actually, there's a song in here. It's called "Dreams of Montana."
There you go.
So
there you go.
Yeah, and this is 12 original compositions. The new one is 13 original compositions, and the first one I did was for a Swedish record company.
Really?
And there's a great long story that we probably don't have time for with that one. But that one
break it down a little bit. Keep it short if you can.
Well, the short story
Give me the poem
is
instead of the novel.
So the short story is a dog that I owned at the time introduced me to a couple of young Swedish girls, one of whom said, "You'll have to come visit me in Sweden." I said yes. She said, "Make sure when you come, bring your guitar and a cowboy hat."
Wow.
Because they love American music. I did what she suggested, was playing in a club, was offered a contract to record an album, came back here, did the recording in the US, sent all of the material to them, and the album sold the equivalent of a gold album there. And it was the one time in my life that I actually made a lot of money playing music.
Good for you. Good for you. That's a good story. You did a nice job encapsulating it. I mean, I can fill in the blanks, I think, with the dog. What park were you walking? What park were you walking through? Let them at home use their imagination about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can write a whole painting around that one little thing there. Good for you.
So
now, how can people get a hold of you? How can people reach your music, or how can people find your music?
Sure. Well,
and talk about some of the places where you play. I mean, you get out and about. I know you're a Weymouth staple, so talk a little bit about how people can get to see you and hear your music.
Well, all of this album is on all of the streaming services. It's on YouTube, I've got a lot of things on YouTube, Facebook. I don't have a website. That's something that I probably am remiss in not having and probably should address, but I currently don't have a website. And as far as playing, I play where I can and when I can. I do a lot of virtual performances. You might be familiar with WATD out of Marshfield.
Know them well.
Sandy and Keith.
Sandy Stride, Keith
Sandy Stride and
James.
Keith
I've been on their
James.
show. Yeah.
Yep. So I do their show a few times a year.
Nice.
Lately, I've been playing at the Union Brew House in Weymouth. It's a wonderful
It's a songwriter showcase, right?
songwriter showcase, and it's you know, that place is the one exception to what I said earlier about playing in places where the music is not the focus, because on those nights, even though there is some background sound, the music is the focus. And
Well, it's Jay Saros, right? Jay
Yep.
Saros and
Carlin Tripp.
Colin
is
Tripp. You know,
usually
they're no slouches themselves with their music. You know, they're
Right.
world-class performers, so they run a tight ship there.
Right. And I have got to say that I'm overwhelmed by the number of absolutely as good as you'll find anywhere songwriters
Yes.
that show up there.
Well, our friend Eileen, you know,
Yeah.
Eileen Springer, you know, she's been on the show many times. And,
Yeah.
you know.
And in fact, anybody who's not going there on a Tuesday night
Right.
is missing out on the most incredible opportunity, because
Right.
many of these people play where you're going to have to pay $15 or $20
Exactly.
to hear them, and they're just
and not
there.
only that, and it's also not your typical jam. You have to sign up. You have to sign up ahead of time. You have to reserve your spot.
Well, actually, it's beyond that. Actually, not to be correcting,
No,
but
go
it's,
ahead.
it's by
Please do.
invitation.
Okay, really?
It's by invitation,
Okay,
so
okay.
yeah, it's not just a sign up. So he really, and I guess I can't say this without being self-serving, but he does a really good job of choosing who's going to play there.
Right.
It's all
Well,
top notch.
Jay's a funny dude. I've been trying to get Jay on here for many years. I've asked him, you know, several times, and it's always, if I ask him in the spring, he'll say, let's do it in the fall. Fall comes along, he'll say, let's do it in the spring. Like, oh, I got a record coming out. Oh, I got bookings coming up. You know, he's playing all over the place.
He is. His career
He's
is
opening
really,
for everybody. He is so blossom. He's a Weymouth guy too.
yeah, it's really going well.
And Carlin Tripp, you know, he is no slouch.
Not at all.
You know,
Not at all. No,
and they have some great talent down there. I know a lot of the people go there. You know, and you know, we got to give the shout out to Ron Rudy, who
Sure.
you know, he does a lot of plugs and a lot of promoting of that.
And I've got a lot of wonderful photographs that he's taken
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really, really grateful.
Is there anything that we haven't talked about, or anything that you thought I might ask you, or anything you want to talk about that we haven't? Because, you know, we've got plenty of time on YouTube, and, you know.
Well, I was kind of hoping you were going to ask me what genre of music I play.
You know, I was just thinking,
This is a setup.
I stayed up all night thinking of this question, and I've been saving it till the end. You know,
Good.
just
I
to
had
see
a
if you and I
feeling.
were on the same page. You know, I kind of, you know, threw you the softball and you hit it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, so
We do have an editing key in there, don't we? What
So-
genre of music to play? I thought we kind of covered it, but let's hit the nail on the head. Talk about your genre of music.
Okay, so about 7 or 8 years ago now, I got what I call back into music.
Right.
I never completely was out of music, but I had that 15-year period where
You're in the witness protection program.
well, it felt that way sometimes. The level of fame that I was attaining, it did feel that way. But there were those 15 years where it was my job.
Right.
I earned my living,
Right.
such as it was, playing music. And then I got into other things. And so about 8 years ago, when I got back into music, I thought about it, and I said, well, folk music really doesn't exist anymore, not really as a viable genre. So what is it that I do? I said, well, Americana. That's what I've been hearing lately, Americana. And one person after another would say to me, oh, what is that? And I would hear myself running through a long list of things that it was not. It's not jazz, and not bluegrass, it's not folk. And one day, after probably the 10th time that I had gone through the litany of what Americana was not, it occurred to me that I didn't have a clue
What it
as
was.
to what it is. And so I thought, well, Bob, I call myself Bob. I said, I said, Bob, you need to think about this, and next time somebody asks you that question. So I came up with something. And so speaking of the songwriters that passed through the brew house, Crit Harmon is another one.
Mm-hmm.
Outstanding. So he actually gets credit for my latest. He refined it. So prior to his refinement, I was referring to it as existential folk western, which really rolls right off the tongue. I thought that's nice, it works. But one night he looked at me in that way that he can, and he just looked at me and he said, existential cowboy noir. And I looked at him and I said,
like it.
I said back to him, and so there you have it. Existential cowboy noir. That is it. That's my genre.
That, if you would ask me, Frank, what do you think it is? I mean, those words just would have rolled off my tongue.
What you would have said.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I would have had to look them all up first.
I doubt
Good
that.
thing I know French.
I
You know.
But the thing is, if the Grammys ever come up with an award
You get a chance.
for existential cowboy noir, I've got a leg up on that already.
I tell you. You're fortunate. Have you followed? That's cool. Have you followed any of the Americana artists around here? I mean, because I've had some on my show.
The one, he's not local, but the one that just stands out for me is Jason Isbell.
Sure, Jason
Jason Isbell is just fantastic.
He is.
And he truly does fit that Americana. But again, in describing why I think his music is Americana, it's because lyrically he has the elements of folk music. It's very, very, very thoughtful, meaningful lyrics.
Yep.
He's got some of that country flavor to his music, but it's not really country.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but yeah, Jason Isbell is my...
He put a powerful band around him. What did he call
The
it?
400
And the
unit.
400, yeah. I saw them down in a place down in New Bedford, down there on the river, down there
Oh,
a couple of years ago.
I know the one you're talking about.
You know the one I'm talking about. But are you familiar with some
The
of the other ones?
Narrows? Is it the Narrows?
No.
Wasn't it? I thought he
It's
was
the
at
outdoor
Narrows.
one, the
Oh,
outdoor
okay.
place, yeah.
I was thinking of the Narrows.
Yeah, he's great. And what about Ilana Katz, Rocky Thomas?
Wow, you're...
You got to check them out. Rocky Thomas does a Sunday brunch kind of a thing, and he puts a great band together. He puts Ilana Katz on the fiddle, which is true Americana, and Pete Henderson on guitar, Rocky. He's got a great band, but Ilana Katz, K-A-T-Z, Katz. She's very much into Americana. Matter of fact, if you go out onto YouTube, look up the show and look up Ilana Katz. She's been on here 2 or 3 times. She was on here one time with Johnny Bergen, and she debuted one of her CDs or one of her songs on the show here of her playing the fiddle and him backing her up, which is that Americana twang. It is hard to define. It's, what's like the definition of pornography, you can't define it, but you know it when you see it. It's kind of like Americana, you can't define it, but you know it when you hear it.
Sure. Yep.
But yeah, check them out. But now, do you stay true to that, or do you how far do you swing into like real funky country versus like the Americana? Like how wide of a spectrum do you swing?
Well, that depends on whether I'm doing my original material
Right.
or some covers. Now, the great thing about my taste in music is when I do covers, it's almost the same as doing original songs because they're usually so obscure that very few people know them.
Such
But
as, give me an example.
Well, I'll give you an example, and this is where the Western comes in. For years there was that label, country Western. And I guess if you go back far enough, it was one thing. You go back to the Texas Playboys. I'm talking about going way back. Hank Williams and some of the
Right, I was going to
early
ask
people.
about Hank Williams.
And
Do Pete Seeger too?
well, I wouldn't put him in there.
No, I
But-
mean, for
but
your
there's
music, do you do any Pete Seeger stuff?
I don't.
No, okay.
No. But there's a whole genre of music that really does not exist in this part of the country. It's Western music.
Okay.
And I can, at least from my perspective, explain what I think the difference between Western music and country music is. At least what passes for country music these days. Western music really draws a lot upon nature, a lot of nature imagery.
Okay.
Be mountains and rivers
Okay.
and all sorts of imagery from nature, and then
Kind of like a John Denver kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
John
you
Denver,
know.
a lot of imagery.
good catch on that. Yes,
Thank you.
Yeah, if he some of the John Denver things I would really label as Western
Yeah.
music. So my idol, my greatest influence, died a couple of months ago, and that's Ian Tyson. And very few people, when I say Ian Tyson, that really doesn't spark much in people.
I know the
but,
name. I probably know it if I hear it.
But when I say Ian and Sylvia,
There you go.
that's usually the response. There you go.
Yeah.
So he was the Ian Tyson. Ian Tyson was the Ian of Ian and Sylvia.
Yeah. So love is strange, huh?
When they broke up, both musically and maritally, for a long time, he had a real down period.
Really?
Emotionally, and he was out of music, and when he started back up in music, he was literally playing around in the kinds of places we were talking about, where there's a television going, and he had his little band, and he's just there earning a living playing music.
Now, is he the same Ian and Sylvia of, Love is Strange?
That was
Ian and Sylvia too,
no.
but that's more 60s rock and roll kind of stuff.
No, the one that they did that. Oh boy, I'm in a blank on this.
That's all right.
They had a couple of songs that really went mainstream, but they were big hits by other people. They never had a hit record. In fact, Ian Tyson's two songs that are really well known are "Someday Soon,"
Okay,
which Judy
yep.
Collins
Sure, Judy
made
Collins,
a
right.
big hit out of, and Susie Bogus, and then "Four Strong Winds." Well, Four Strong Winds is a really interesting song. First of
That's
all,
been covered by so many people.
and it was recently, a few years back, in Canada, they polled the entire population. This is what the Canadians spend their time doing. And they wanted to know what the Canadians thought was the greatest Canadian song of all time ever written. And Ian Tyson's Four Strong Winds was the one that
Wow.
was chosen.
Yeah, because I thought, I don't think I heard that one, but I heard that, was because the national song I thought was Gordon Lightfoot's Trilogy, I believe.
Canadian Railroad Trilogy was number 2.
Was it two?
Came in
I
number
knew that
2.
he was right up there.
Yes.
What, like the trilogy and yeah.
And I could have gone with either of those.
Yeah,
Both magnificent.
yeah.
But the big break for Ian came when Neil Young recorded Four Strong Winds on a multi-platinum selling album. And the royalties from that literally bought Ian his ranch. And so anyway, I digressed. So subsequent to Ian and Sylvia, he had a 14-album career of true Western music.
Wow.
And that's he's one of my greatest influences.
What do you think of the new country music? What do you think of
You're going to get me in trouble.
the new stuff? I'm with you on that. I mean, it's they might have catchy rhythms, but lyrically,
Well,
I can write better lyrics to some of them. I just can't put the music to them. But lyrically,
So I'm going to get myself off the hook here, and this is how I'm going to do it. I'm simply going to quote Emmylou Harris.
okay.
Strike that. I'm going to paraphrase,
Okay.
because you'd catch me on that. I'm going to paraphrase Emmylou Harris. I believe she said, "That garbage is not country music. I'm not sure it's music." I didn't say that. I'm quoting or paraphrasing Emmylou Harris.
Yeah.
That's her
Yeah, it's
opinion.
interesting. I mean, I think that's I could see where that's coming from a musician's perspective. I don't think I would be that harsh as a listener, but I can get the essence of I can smell it. I can smell what she's saying.
Yeah, and honestly, for my personal taste, I don't have to go too far back in country music to find a genre, to find artists that I highly respect. I mean, Johnny Cash is the best of the best. Waylon Jennings. The list could go on and on and on and on. They are just fantastic songwriters and singers. There was real
Chris
country.
Christopherson, who kind of flies under the radar a lot. He was fantastic, and so many songs that we hear were written by Chris Christopherson.
Absolutely, and now it's country pop, is what it is.
Yeah,
and a lot of people love it. And I'm not putting it down. I'm just saying that for my taste, number one, I don't really enjoy it. And secondly, I really don't think of it as country music anymore. Country pop, I'll go with. And just not my taste.
One of the ways that I look at it, and see if this makes sense, is that when you talk about the Cashes, you talk about the storytellers, the real legitimate, air quotes, country musicians who paint the pictures. You get invested in the lyrics. You're invested in the lyrics, and the melody comes second or at least equal. And I think that has totally shifted away, that you get caught up in the melody, you get caught up in the beat, you dance, you hop around, and if you ask them what the song's about, they have no clue. They might be able to spit out the words, but if you say, well, translate that, what does that mean? What's the message in the song? What are they trying to say? I don't know, something about a beer brawl in a bar. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
Like you listen, even to John Denver, you listen to Denver, you're involved in the lyrics.
Absolutely.
You're caught up in the lyrics. You listen to Cash, Christopherson, and the greats, the Joni Mitchells and all of that, to Judy Collinses. You hear the lyrics. I think in a lot of the music today, you don't.
Right.
You might know the lyrics, you might understand it, you might be able to sing it word for word, but what does it mean? Nothing.
Right. But the genius of those people that you mentioned is they were also creating beautiful sounds.
Correct, right. They had the melodies to go with it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That
absolutely.
to me is the epitome of songwriting.
Yes.
I want people to hang on every single word, but it's also important to me that somebody who isn't catching the lyrics at all can come away and say, oh, that was a nice song. I liked that. So that to me is the goal. If you can write something that's truly meaningful, but enjoyable enough musically that you're not required to really listen to it and pay attention to it to enjoy it, that to me is a really good song.
Well, I think where that really shines, at least for me, is that what encapsulates both of those, lyrics and music, is Broadway theater.
Interesting.
I don't know if you're into that.
No, but I wouldn't have.
But Broadway, is, in my opinion, encapsulates that, because it's a story. They have to tell the story of the play, and then they have to have the lyrics and the beauty of the music to support the lyrics. So you are encapsulated with both of them. So I'm very much into Broadway theater. I mean, you name plays, I've seen them a dozen times. So I'm very much into that. And I think that I didn't think about that until you just said it, that balance of lyrics and melody.
Right. And I didn't think about this until you said that. What about opera? There's a quintessential example.
Similar to theater.
Right.
Very much to the theater.
Right.
That, you need, the lyrics is telling the story, but you have to be able to support that with the music.
Right. The only problem is with opera, it's usually in Italian or German.
Right.
So
you don't speak Italian and German? Come on. Little country boy like you?
No, I speak some Swedish.
Yeah, you probably haven't dangled a participle in like six years, right?
Well, partner, that's the first time anyone has said that to me in a long time.
I always say there ain't nothing wrong with my talking, brother. Well, hey, I mean, this has been fun, and this is why I do what I do, is that it gives me an opportunity to learn from people like you and meet nice people like you, and it gives me a chance to get you out there. Now, people are going to know who you are, so they're going to say, hey, weren't you on that Frank Walsh show?
Well, thanks for having me. It's been fun for me too. It's really been genuinely enjoyable, and
So again, people can get a hold of you. They can find you on Facebook.
Find me on Facebook. Find me on YouTube.
All of the music services and the streaming services.
All the streaming services.
Cool.
Yep.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for coming, and also what makes it possible here is that I couldn't do it without the folks at SMAC. We got Luke, and we've got Kevin, and we've got Anya running this place. They're the ones who make us look and sound pretty.
And that's a heck of a job.
Beverly Dancy, who is a frequent visitor to this show and supporting of my music, which I am very thankful for. And she is sitting off camera, but as you're watching this and you see some of the pictures of Bob here, Beverly's the one behind that camera doing some of the aiming and the shooting. So, Bev, thank you very much for that. And also, folks, folks like this go out and they play for you. And I always like to end that show with go out and support your musicians. He mentioned some places where he play. Go to the Union Brew House on Tuesday nights. The food's pretty good.
It is.
Not expensive. Go and check them out. You're going to see some world-class talent there that, fly under the radar. And as you said, there's so much talent out there, and the only way that you're going to go out and is to hear about it is to go out and find it. So, thank you all for tuning in. Once again, Bob, thank you for coming in today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I had a blast.
And thanks to everyone here at the station.
You're welcome. Okay. So, folks, on that note, as always, Frank Walsh with Bob Uvello. Tune in and tune on.